Like
an
you cannot put in
explicit, stateable proposition?
something that is demonstrably true that I could not put in a proposition.
Oh, that's easy.
Okay.
Sure you want to go there?
I'm not afraid of anything.
Okay. Okay.
If I'm wrong, I want to know I'm wrong. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to, for years I had this thing going where people would say, oh, and this is kind of what we're getting at from a different angle. I would say they would be afraid of what we would lose if we lost religion. And I basically said, demonstrate to me any benefit.
Oh, you'd lose art and poetry and drama and narrative and story.
Why? Are there no godless artists and poets?
Well, there are artists and poets who think they're godless.
So we might have crossed over into a problem area because
no doubt.
I don't actually, I can't draw for crap, although I do draw during the show. But one of the individuals who came to the show the other night handed me something that she had spent a great deal of time drawing. She's a wonderful artist. I'm very grateful to get it. And, while I pretend to read minds on stage, I constantly acknowledge that I can't actually read minds. So I can't tell you whether or not she actually believes in a God, but I can tell you that I actually don't believe in a God, and I could write
But you act
poetry.
like you do.
Huh?
But you act like you do. That's why you didn't
I
want to throw
act
poor
like-
Sam off the stage.
No, now you're making a claim. Okay, so I'm telling you I don't believe there's a God, and
Yeah.
your response to that is, I really do, because I have a moral sense. But my moral sense is utterly without any appeal to a God.
Explicitly.
Or implicitly.
Maybe.
The f-
That's not so obvious.
Okay, it's really
See, because
it's
you
easy.
regard Sam Harris as an implicitly valuable entity. Because otherwise you'd just throw him off the stage. And then the question is, well, just exactly why is he an implicitly valuable entity?
I don't
What's your
think he's-
metaphysics of that?
I don't think he's implicitly valuable in the sense, I don't think he's implicitly valuable in the sense that the universe has implied that there's something explicit about it. For me, morality is far simpler than some people.
Now wait, you
make it
sounded
out to be.
doubtful about that. You know that, like
Maybe
you've been
you're the
sounding-
mind reader.
you've been- well, maybe.
Because you've already suggested that despite me sitting here and having talked about this for decades, that I don't believe in God, that I actually do because I have a moral code. But my moral code, which I've
Well, I was
talked
more
about,
specific. I said it was because you didn't want to throw Sam off the stage. It
yes,
wasn't
but
just
you
that
didn't.
had a
You didn't
moral code.
You didn't even attempt to ask me why I didn't throw Sam off the stage. Instead, you went to why do you think Sam has implicit value? Because it seems that in your narrative,
I'm willing
that's
to go
the
there.
only justification.
Well, maybe you were afraid of being punished.
I think you no.
Oh,
I think
okay.
you can have a perfectly acceptable foundation for secular morality, even if it fundamentally centers around selfishness. I'd rather not be thrown off the stage. It's in my best interest to encourage that sort of understanding in others, and therefore I will not throw him off the stage. I would rather not have my stuff stolen, and it's in my best interest to encourage others not to do that, so I will not steal stuff, and I will work with others to ensure that the people who steal stuff are punished. It is in a virtually pragmatic moral system.
Why do you think it's not in your best interest to have stuff stolen from you or to be thrown off the stage?
Why is it not in my best interest?
Yeah. No, you don't get to think, oh, that's self-evident. It's like nothing's self-evident to the skeptic. Let's keep that in mind.
Oh. Well, so...
Because if we're going to get skeptical here, we might as well go all the way to the bottom.
So for Sam and I, the foundations, and we're not the only ones, but I tend to reference Sam just because if I say this, then somebody will say, well, that's exactly what Sam Harris says, except that, I was given this lecture before he wrote his book. But his book is better than my lecture, so read his book. When I talk about this, I'm talking about well-being is the language that Sam uses.
Oh, sad.
I don't care whether or not somebody else considers that morality. I would think at a minimum, would you and I agree that...
That whole well-being thing, man, as a basis for a metaphysics, that's just a non-starter.
We're not basing metaphysics on it.
Sam is.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is, because he's out to maximize well-being.
You can take it up with Sam.
Well, okay, sorry. Do you think I'm wrong about that claim? That's what I understood from
I don't think
reading
Sam's saying anything metaphysical about it. So here's the thing. We are physical beings.
Well, it's his fundamental claim. So it's sort of at the basis of his ethic. And so he says, well, we should work to maximize people's well-being, or at least to Well, he does a bit more than that, because
It's
he
not-
says we should
so he's
minimize their
not-
suffering.
He's not maximize, minimize in this sense of simple consequentialism. Let me do this.
Okay.
We're physical beings in a physical universe, and the laws that dictate how things work in the universe, they are the ultimate arbiters of what is or isn't in our best interest, whether we know it or not. So, for example, so far as I can tell,
Then why do you need free will?
I don't think
Why
we
do you
need
believe
free
in
will.
it then?
I-
Why do you attribute agency to things if the laws of the
Can I
universe can
get to that one point?
Well, yeah, but there was a contradiction
Because
that was confusing me.
free will isn't relevant to this.
It is if the laws of the universe are what are dictating what's good for us.
No, because if you chop off my head, that is clearly not good for me. And it doesn't matter whether it was an act of free will or if it was my lawnmower.
It's clearly not good for you because you think you're valuable and worth preserving.
Yes.
Okay, that's the issue. Why do you think you're valuable and worth preserving?
Because I am the descendants of people who thought they were valuable and worth preserving, and the ones who didn't think that have killed themselves. But this is not a statement about... This is not a statement about intrinsic value.
I don't know. Yes, I think
No,
it is.
it's-
Okay, but I think it is.
Okay. The reason that we talk about this in terms of well-being is because irrespective of whether or not I care about well-being, there are facts about well-being.
Sure, let's hear them, man. Line those suckers up.
If you chop off my head, it's in contradiction to my well-being. I mean, but the point
No, I wasn't willing to grant that, actually.
Okay.
I'm saying that's a metaphysical presupposition. You're just saying I have to accept that. It's
No,
like-
I'm not telling you
because
at all what to accept.
Sure you are. You're saying that your
trying
death would be
I'm
wrong.
trying to explain what my position is.
Okay, but you said that that wouldn't be in accordance with your well-being. Okay, that's a metaphysical statement or philosophical statement. It's not an obvious fact.
That
That's not
chopping
a
off somebody's
fact.
head is contrary to their well-being.
It depends on how you define well-being.
Sure.
Yeah, but it matters.
But if you define well-being as this glass of water, we're no longer talking about the same thing.
Well, you can define well-being. That's fine. That's what I'm waiting for.
This is what I'm... Well,
You can't do it. You can't define well-being. It's
well, then
very,
why
very
should I try? I
difficult.
certainly can't do it if you keep telling me I can't do it.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'll back off. There's a... Go ahead. I'm all ears.
So, the primary objection to mine and Sam's position that keeps coming back is, why should anybody care about well-being? And we both will acknowledge that this is, in fact, a subjective preference. There are people who are going to care about well-being, there are people who aren't. The second objection is that well-being is not clearly defined. Both of us have acknowledged this. It's not as if we're saying we have all the answers to how to go about living a better life. We're just saying that however we're going to define well-being, which is, I say you can start with a couple of foundations. You can start with death is preferable to life, but you don't get very far that way. And
Stop suffering.
Well, no, I'm saying you could start with death is preferable to life, but you don't get very far that way because those
Yeah, you
people-
do. You stop suffering. You just die.
Yes,
Right, so you can start with the presupposition.
except that when you're dead, you're not being, so there's no well-being.
No, well, that's...
If
That's
it's
not necessarily the
if
case.
we're looking
because you
for the
could make
best
an-
things about our life, you
Yeah.
can't say death is better.
Yeah, you can.
Well,
People
I
do
know
all
that
the
you can
time.
say it.
People do all the time. They do. No, look.
They can
I'm
express
not
their
being flippant
preference,
about
but their
this.
preference can be wrong. How can it possibly be better for your life if you're dead?
What if you, are a terminal burn victim with cancer?
So this is the point that I was getting to. I am perfectly fine with the idea that for certain instances, there may be occasions that death is preferable to an individual over life. But when we're speaking in broader terms, if we're talking about let's create the best society we can, let's create the best quality of life we can for people, death is not that across the board. That doesn't mean that there aren't individual exceptions. So the foundations that I started with, you could start with death is better than life, but blah, blah, blah. If you start with life is generally preferable to death, health is generally preferable to sickness, happiness is generally preferable to sadness, none of these are absolute locked in stone rules. From those things,
Okay, so if you start with them.
yes, if you
So
start...
you're not skeptical about those claims.
Wow.
Well, I'm asking.
You know,
I'm
I came
asking.
out and said that I wasn't going to be trying to straw man you left and right. And now every time I say something, you're like, oh, so you're not skeptical about that.
Well, I'm trying to
I haven't gotten
No,
to
sorry,
it.
I'm not trying to attack you. I'm trying to understand where your argument begins.
Well, it seems odd that you would come out with, so you're not skeptical about that.
Well, that's a
While
question.
I'm on my skepticism tour, while I'm in mid-sentence to describe that these are the general foundations that you start with.
Okay, that's what I
And-
was asking. Those are, okay, so, but what you're saying, if you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
I'm not trying to be difficult. You're saying that those are your starting positions. Those are the things that you accept
I'm saying they can be.
on faith.
No.
Oh, you have a rationale for them.
Yes.
Let's hear it.
You already have. Life is generally preferable to death because we're talking about our life, and death is generally not in the interest of the living. It can be an exception. This is the point that I was getting to. So you could start with those foundations. You could start with any three that you found. You could pick three arbitrary foundations. And the one aspect that makes a secular moral system distinct from religious pronouncements and divine command theory and those sorts of things is that the secular moral system has as its goal the object of getting better at getting better, which means if you find out that one of your foundations is wrong or in conflict with something else, you can now change that. You could start with death as preferable to life, and then when you find out that it's not working that well, you change that foundation. I think that these foundations, based on the evidence of how people tend to live their lives and what they care about, are a good set of three. There could be better ones that somebody come up with. I'm open to revision on any of these at any time. But to say that I'm not skeptical about them is exactly the opposite of what I am. Because skepticism is about, I'm not going to accept something as true without good reason, and it's about being open to revision should there be evidence. If you and I agree that we care about a good life isn't very well defined. And we may have different ideas about what good life is. But if we could actually just sit here and take notes, I think that we'd come across maybe a handful of things that we would agree would make for a good life. If we take those and compare them to the foundations of a secular moral system like what I'm describing, we can determine, non-subjectively, whether or not the list we've come up with are consistently approachable from that foundation. And we can do that for religious morality as well. The analogy that I've used in the past is, for example, a game of chess. There's nothing about the universe that requires that we care about chess or care about the rules of chess. The rules of chess are arbitrary. Somebody made them up. We changed them. We added en passant. We added castling. We added things like that. We have the rules of chess. We don't always know what the best move is. But if the goal of the game is to win, or at a minimum, not lose, then we can analyze the moves with respect to the consequences and with respect to the goal of winning and determine which moves are better and which moves are worse. That is what a secular moral system does because it allows revision, whereas religious systems don't allow for revision. There's not a Bible 3.0. There's not a Quran 2.0. There's no new revelation from God to say, hey, I said all this stuff about slavery, now I'm opposed to it. Or, hey, I was really down on homosexuals, but now I'm okay with it. Hey, when I said that here's what caused diseases, or that you were unclean and shouldn't enter the temple, all those things are actually wrong. The germ theory of disease is right. And none of that's come out.
Well, there is kind of a Bible 2.0. That was the New Testament, right?
Well,
so that's not exactly right.
That is the update for the Christians,
Yeah.
except that it's worse than the first one.
Well, that's not exactly the point. The point is there was an update. So